Anti-Society, welcome back to the Anti-Social Planet. Today we are checking out some more of Vinland Saga, and in the last episode we went back to the farm with Thorfinn and got to see a bit of a time skip. We also got introduced to the previous master of the farm, the father of the current master, and see his different ideologies and how he views the world in a way that makes him butt heads with his son. I think a lot of that is that he has this idea of if you put in the work, you deserve to gain some kind of compensation for that, which, given that the farm is run by slaves, not exactly what's going on with the current master. And I think that part of why he is so adamant about how he needs to be working on the farm, he needs to be putting in effort, he needs to be able to sustain himself instead of just moving back in with his son and being able to do nothing and benefit from it, is because he believes that you have to put in the work to have earned your keep, right? So he feels as if he needs to be able to sustain himself through those actions, through doing that work and that labor. Interesting to see that difference between them and how they're related and can literally interact with each other and how they have those differing ideologies. We also, I feel like, are foreshadowing that the farm is going to get attacked, which I feel different things about, because on the one hand, maybe we shouldn't have slaves. All this, oh, you can earn back your freedom. You could have just given them their freedom, but whatever. But also we have people on the farm that are legitimately making some kind of existence for themselves. I feel like that is how we are going to be reconnecting with Knut and dealing with the fact that he is the king now. We'll see what happens. We're in the autumn now. We've time skipped. I don't know if we're going to be swiftly moving into the winter season, which will definitely change whether or not they're getting like attacked or whatever. But I feel like definitely a slower season for farmers. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with that. But let's just get into the episodes and see what's going on the farm for this episode. In 3, 2, 1, go. I was gonna say we have tracks. We're trying to figure out someone who's around. Catching up with a snake. Uh-oh. I don't like the episode name, because that's their master, right? Iron Fist. I feel like there's gonna be something not great happening. Oh, so this is like perhaps a regular issue, like they're gonna come back. I don't like how his eyes are shadowed. So it looks like we're gonna be following Snake for this, maybe? Get some of his story of him actually working, as opposed to him like lazing about and talking about how he's like, I definitely do lots of work. But we're actually going to see him do lots of work. I feel like Thorfinn's going to end up helping Snake with stuff. Even if it's not intentional. Because we had, in the last episode where they were eating together, that Snake was like, what are your thoughts on like strategy? Or like you would know that fact about how we don't have enough people to protect the farm. And Thorfinn's like, oh, I wouldn't know. But I'm like, he probably does. Like, he's probably clocked it subconsciously just because of his upbringing. So I feel like he's probably going to end up helping out with it, even if it isn't something he's like intentionally doing. Like, he probably just understands like threats and strategy better than most of the people that are around. Also, I noticed in the opener, because we have Knut where there's like the eye that opens up on his cheek from like the scar. Is that his father's eye? Because it looks like it is. Which would be interesting. Like some of his father kind of still living within him. A little ominous. Or watching him. He feels kind of watched by his father's like legacy. I mean, that's a good point. Hardworking, maybe. He's hopeless. Just not paying attention. Maybe. I don't know if he's a good person, necessarily. Gosh, things seem too good. I'm waiting for it to all go sideways. Oof. The direct contrast of that, of like celebrating something happening and then the slap. I feel like there's probably some more resentment in her than she lets on. Aw. It's nice to see him, like, I don't know, taking interest in things. Gosh, everything is gonna go topsy-turvy. I'm just, like, waiting for the moment. They're gonna, like, blindside me with it, too. Like, it's gonna be, like, fine, fine, fine. Farming slice of life. And then they're just gonna, like, come at me with something terrible happening. I don't know. He's very intense about everything he does, isn't he? The like concern and horror on Thorfinn's face of like, what are you doing? I like how Thorfinn's like, okay, so we keep working. And then and I was like, no, we throw in everything we have with this one bet. Oh god, things are gonna go awful. Just like, I don't know when it's gonna be this episode. It's gonna be like 3 episodes from now. I don't know, but something's gonna happen to those crops. That's an interesting philosophy to sum up in one line to say he thinks that people should just stay where they belong. Yep, that's true. I think people don't take him seriously, but they should. I feel like since we have someone who's like used to combat at the farm, I'm even more anxious that there's going to be an attack. They also just keep saying the thing, and I'm like, what's the thing? Did we catch thieves? Are they children? A hunch? You don't have any proof? The music has changed. I feel like they intentionally look like I think that the girl looks a lot like Anna's sister, and then I feel like the boy also like intentionally is drawn kind of like Anna, but also like some of his features kind of remind me of Thorfinn. Like I feel like it's intentional. He seems to really revel in combat, which is concerning. Some hesitation there. Sure, in theory he would. In reality, maybe not so much. Oh dear. Oh, don't eat it. Oh god. He's tried one. Ugh. Yeah, though that is a legitimate reaction to that. Uh-oh. Interesting past. We had the his father, who was also had like weapons and stuff that implied that he was a warrior, so kind of like three generations of warriors at this point. He seems less interested in claiming the actions that he's kind of like known for though. Like Thorgil seems to be like being at war is kind of great. Dear. At least there's some compassion. Their history. Oh, is that why he disappeared? Because he owes a debt? Are we emotional? What's happening? I mean, I know we've seen him being compassionate, but like it doesn't seem quite within character. Especially in contrast to like them talking about him at war. I'll just convince them to talk me. Practically. Isn't usually the punishment for theft like hands? Not that that makes it better. I mean, war and fighting will do that to you. You don't have no choice, but an alternate outcome. Are they gonna tell them to work on the farm to like repay what they stole? Pay back the debt. Oh yeah, their father's debt too. I mean, that's also true. They're only stealing because they don't have what they need to support themselves. That got ominous. Everyone seems so ready to just like beat some children. And I feel like that should be concerning. Also feels like not a great way to get people to want to work for you and not be like resentful. But I feel like it's probably the world that they grew up with, right? Like they're like, oh, that's the only way to deal with the situation because that's the way that I grew up seeing people deal with this situation. I doubt your begging's gonna do anything for them. Definitely don't let him do it. Be gentle. What happened to gentle? Oh yeah, there's gonna be some resentment there. He's such a strange character of like seeing the brutality that he displayed or that they talk about him displaying in battle, but then also like allowing the beating to happen, but also clearly not wanting to do it, but also he has slaves. Like there's so many things where you're just like, what happened? Interesting. So that's why he didn't want to talk about it. He was kind of deflecting because he was like, it's not what it seems. It was just a way of getting that credibility. You probably should be. Hmm, I feel like probably not. There's gonna be some betrayal there. I can just feel it brewing. no, she definitely can't be trusted. There's some resentment there too. I feel like there's some ominous energy to her because she seems so like kind. But now I'm just like, ooh, I feel like she's planning things. Some interesting character stuff in that of, one, I see Snake differently. I didn't necessarily mean like he was like a good person before this point, but I'm a little more suspicious of him as a person, because anyone who's just like, oh, we clearly need to punish children for doing what they needed to survive because their father abandoned them. Even if he was killed, still definitely afraid of Thorgil, his son. I feel like he's kind of right in being terrified of him, but also a strange, again, paradox of him, which I think is just makes him a more of a real character. And I've talked about in the series before about how there is paradox with lots of the characters. Even Asclav, he gets introduced as this bad person. He's the antagonist. We're like supposed to be, you know, resentful towards him and not like him because of what he did to Thorfinn's father. And then as you go through the series, you start to see him as more of a person and you understand his motivations and the kinds of things that he's been through. And you're like, now I feel more complicated things. And I think it's the same thing here of he owns slaves, and he also is obviously, yeah, I have to agree to beating a child because that's like what's expected of me, and like I need to have a certain image to survive. But then at the same time, it's like he does have this compassion and he does want to find an alternative, right? And I think that kind of is a contrast to the things that we've seen before this of him seeming very detached, the way that he talks to his father and like the way that he presents himself throughout the previous episodes. I think as the audience, we're supposed to see him in a certain light, and then this episode is saying, oh, that's all facade, it's not actually who he is. And that's part of how he presents himself in the world so that he can get by, is that he's like, I need to have a lot of wealth, I need to have accolades of being a warrior, I need to be like someone who deals out punishments and has a very strict demeanor, because if I am compassionate or don't show bravery, that is not something that is going to reflect well on me, and I'm going to lose any kind of influence or power or living that I have, right? People aren't going to respect me, and this is the only way for me to survive long enough in this world to get to this point, is really interesting. And I think also with the girl, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the girl that Aenon is infatuated with, she also seems different, right? Like the beginning of the series, she's very kind, very loving, seems to be very compassionate, and then we get to that moment where she's hit by her master's wife, and you see the shift in her eyes, and I'm like, oh no, there's some resentment there, there's some anger at the surface of who she is, and you see what she is like when she is being a slave and being treated as a slave, and what that means in direct comparison to how she presents herself to like Aenon. And I think that's really interesting to see this kind of two-facedness of one person needing to be seen as more cruel and strict in order to survive, another person needing to seem more compassionate and forgiving in order to survive. Interesting to see the difference in the way that they need to present themselves to the world as opposed to who they actually are under the surface. So I feel like there's some things brewing, especially since now we have this warrior son that has returned. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to there being some kind of conflict at the actual farm, especially since we've had King Canute talked about. I feel like we're inching closer and closer to there being some kind of conflict, especially since things seem too good with Thorfinn having his crops and making friends, and things seem going well for him, that I'm just like, someone's gonna come out of left field and just decimate everything that has happened up to this point. And I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen at some point. So I hope you enjoyed watching that along with me. You can click those plays to go to my previous reactions, or you can subscribe to me next time I post a Vinland Saga reaction. I will see you in the next video. Bye.